Hi, and welcome to Feeling Beings Who Think. My name is Ariane Rice. I am an Episcopal priest and a leadership coach and a bunch of other things. But here on my podcast, I hope I am exploring with my guests and with you the wisdom that comes from self-reflection, specifically self-reflection on our vocational journey. And I wanted to have just a brief introduction and opener to season 3 of this podcast. One of the things I've discovered in having all these conversations with friends and colleagues and people I didn't even know before I sat down to Zoom with them is how every single thing, every single experience, every single way in which we were moving towards something that didn't work out, or moving towards something that we were wildly successful at, and then all of a sudden we weren't, every single way in which we have tried to live into a professional identity matters. One of the things that I am discovering that has really started to be a gift in my life is looking back on my very first career choice. The very first way in which I started envisioning a future with possibility, a future that would allow me to take care of myself, take care of people I loved, and both utilize my gifts and fulfill this need I have forever and always had to do something that really meant something to me in terms of what I was using my life for. And that very first thing, which I actually don't share very often, is that I really wanted to be a performer, a singer. Very specifically, I really wanted to be in musical theater because in high school, that's where I found my tribe. And that was the vehicle through which I could visualize my future. Anyway, two things from that career choice that I believe have impacted who I am today and are real gifts that I'm only starting to appreciate. Number one is listening. And I don't mean listening to my voice as I learned to study. I mean the listening I was trained to do in a conservatory. I would spend hours listening to symphonies, motets, cantatas, orchestras, pianos, singers, of course, music from the 8th century, music from Bali, music from contemporary composers in the 20th century, the music, not music of John Cage. I could go on, but I would spend hours just listening and cultivating an ear to discern parts, to discern melodies, to discern synchronicities of rhythm, to discern time periods and genres and composers. And not only was this incredibly enjoyable for me, I mean, I do remember days where I could not believe I was given this opportunity, but that was the beginning of being able to listen. It was the beginning of cultivating a discipline of listening in spaces that are quiet, but not really, like when you go for a walk in the woods or when you're sitting at a coffee shop and observing people and just paying attention to your surroundings. And I'm becoming really aware of that skill set and its very beginnings. That really honed and cultivated an attentive ear that I believe is key to any vocation, but particularly to the vocations I care about. Listening is a big part of developing our capacities for leadership. And the second thing I learned from my vocal training was that my voice was intricately and indelibly connected to the entirety of who I am and what I offer. I struggled a lot with my singing voice. I had a really, really great belty musical theater voice, but when it came to classical singing, that was harder. And I had a teacher after teacher after teacher tell me that because of my body type, because of the type of voice I had, a full, heavyish, mezzo, also soprano, voluptuous voice, Well, it was going to take a little bit of time to grow into that voice, for my body and my voice to kind of catch up with one another. And wow, that made me mad because that upended certain ideas I had and definitive ways in which I wanted my life to progress. That didn't work out quite that way because I had this thing called a passaggio. I think you can figure out what the word means, even though it's Italian. It's a vocal passage all of us have when we move through those different ranges in our vocal register. And it was really hard for me to move through mine because I had cultivated this heavy belt in the lower register and developing that upper register. And more importantly, developing the space between, smoothing it out, required a huge amount of relearning different musculature operations of a bunch of singing parts of your body, from your diaphragm all the way up to your head, relearning muscle movements and then retaining new muscle memory, which is really hard to do. Any of you who have studied yoga and used to do CrossFit, you understand what I mean. And the thing about a passaggio is that you can't force it. You have to be really patient. You have to be gentle in your learnings. And you have to accept that it will be a gradual process that is both learning vocal techniques and waiting for your body and your voice to come into that place of mutual fulfillment where each is serving the other to bring forth that which you have been given to share. At a certain point, I gave up the idea of wanting to be a professional singer because I wanted to just keep loving singing and I wasn't willing to wait. So I've been thinking a lot about passaggios. And as I listened to and edited the stories and the conversations from my guests this season, I was like, wow, you know what? All of us go through passaggios. Passaggios are a break, they're a crack. For me, it always felt like a chasm. And all of us, not just once, but a couple of times, if not a lot of times, fall into those cracks and those chasms and make a decision that, whatever way we've been approaching this, it's not working anymore. Whatever way we've been trying to insist on making something happen, we can't. I can't. It's going to happen in its own time. And if I maybe partner with the possibility as opposed to trying to control the outcome, I actually might get to where I want to go. And getting to where we want to go is the first bit of learning that came to me from the conversations this season that has to do with both being a clergy leader and leadership coaching. When we really wed ourselves to specific outcomes, it just doesn't work. When we partner with the possibility of moving towards wholeness, when we partner with the possibility of accepting where we're at, what we can do, what we can't do, what's ours and what isn't ours, and when we allow for the graciousness and vulnerability of letting other people participate with us, letting situations and circumstances participate with us, accepting reality for what it is, well, then all of a sudden we start to make a lot more progress, but at the same time realize we're not really progressing to a place. We're progressing towards wholeness. We're working towards a reconciling reality whereby there is both fulfillment alongside challenge, alongside uncertainty, alongside faith. And I don't mean a doctrine or a dogma, but faith that we're equipped with everything we need to get to the next stage of wherever it is we are going. And therefore, you have to fall. You have to fall into those chasms and those cracks. And look, I know I am not saying anything that hasn't been said a million times before, but that's the whole point. Perennial wisdom is all about an understanding that is both very, very personal because it's based on my unique experience. It's based on listening to these incredible, unique experience of these conversation partners, and then connecting that with this perennial wisdom And when I fall, this is point number 3, one of the best places where I think I need to start dusting myself off is to take the time to look backwards. I think the reason so often I fall, some of us fall in trying to get where we're going, is that we're focused way too much on our future-oriented narrative, which is false because we can't predict the future. And we start giving short shrift to making meaning of what's been before and looking at the ways in which who we've been, how experiences have shaped us, how they're showing up now. And believe me, at this point in my life, which is, I'm not going to tell you, but it's like a second half point, a little bit past the second half point, I'm amazed at some of the ways in which past behaviors that I really thought I had worked through at this point, well, they're showing up because I'm in a time of significant change, professionally, personally, as a mom, as a wife, as a priest, as a coach. It's a big pivot year. And because of that, it's scary. And I'm figuring things out. And I do what all of us do, which is lean into practices that used to serve that no longer do. And when I discovered it, I realized I needed to do some work on unraveling, detangling those practices and choosing new behaviors, new practices that are way more in alignment with who I want to be. And that's where I'm going to end this, which is on this last piece that, again, is perennial wisdom. So this is a quote of Cynthia Bourgeault. She says, "Wisdom isn't knowing more, it's knowing with more of you." Wisdom isn't knowing more, it's knowing with more of you, which connects entirely with one of my favorite scriptural quotes. Knowledge puffs up, love builds up. Tapping into wisdom, connecting with love as a force, not just a sentimental feeling, but as an energizing force, requires silence and listening. Getting comfortable with the silence within ourselves, tuning our inner ear and our outer ear sometimes to be present with that sacred internal silence is how we learn to know with more of ourselves, how we both discover our wisdom and how we know how to be with others as they discover theirs. Because I'm going to make an assumption about you, which is who this whole conversation is directed towards. Like me, you long for wholeness inside and out, reconciliation inside and out, love inside and out. And that's it. So I'm really excited about the coming season. And as I hope you already know, I am immeasurably grateful for your presence here with me. Thanks for listening.